Hey, John here, and this is the Canon Rebel T3i, and in this video I'm going to go ahead and show you the very basics about the buttons and controls and how to operate this camera. So this is a really good video for those people who are maybe interested in getting this camera or just got it or have owned it for a while but want to know a little bit more about it. So to start off, here we have the on-off button on the top. You can flip that to on. Next to it is the mode dial. The first mode we're going to talk about is the green automatic mode. This is the full automatic mode, and it's basically where the camera does everything for you. It doesn't give you really much control at all. And on the back screen here, this is where you're going to see your settings depending on what mode you're on. Now before I go through these other modes and what they are, I want to talk about the screen a little bit. The back screen is where you can access different settings quickly. You can do that by pushing this Q button here. By pushing the Q button, it will give you access to several settings depending on what mode you're on. Some modes have more settings than others. So if you're in full automatic, the only setting you get to change is whether or not you take a single photograph, or if you can use an infrared remote or 10-second timer or a custom timer, which then you can say, oh wait, 6 seconds to take the photo or whatever, or just keep it on single. But push Q again, it goes back to your regular screen. That's it. That's all you get. Now, switching over to P, which is program. Program is just like automatic, except you get far more control over what the camera can do. So in program here, you can see I have a lot more settings I can change. If I push my Q button now, all of a sudden I can use my arrow keys to go to these different settings, and the default, it will give you a little blurb about exactly what that setting is. Now as far as the other modes on the dial here, let's go through those first. The program mode, like I said, is full automatic, but you can override a lot of things. And then TV, AV, and M, and P. These four are going to be fairly standard on any DSLR camera. M is full manual. A is aperture priority, which Canon calls aperture value. That's where you choose the aperture and the camera does the shutter speed, so it's a semi-automatic mode. TV is actually shutter priority. Canon calls it time value. That's where you choose the shutter speed and the camera chooses the aperture. Program, camera chooses both. Manual, you choose both. One above that is the auto depth of field mode. It's a little strange mode, but the way it works and what it's for is it's a type of automatic mode where it will try to manipulate what's in focus and try and figure out, say, how many objects or people are in the photograph and make sure that all of them are in focus, assuming that the autofocus points can cover them. It's a little strange mode to have on the camera, but it can be useful. I could see how it could be useful. Below the green automatic mode is the non-flash green automatic mode. So this is exactly like green automatic mode, except this pop-up flash right here will never pop up. After that is the creative auto mode. Now on the creative auto mode, if you push the Q button, it allows you to change a couple different things. This is the desired ambience, vivid, soft, warm, intense. It's just talking about the color. There's monochrome, which is black and white. And then the next setting is if the background is blurred out or sharper, and that's actually the aperture size that's controlling that. Basically, the bigger the aperture opening or the bigger the iris inside the lens is, the more blurred out the background is. And the smaller that aperture is, the more is in focus. But the creative auto is a way for you to manipulate how sharp or blurred the background is without having to know all those photographic settings or terminology. So here's your drive mode. You can take single, continuous, timer remote, all that kind of stuff. Next, below the creative auto mode, you'll see a bunch of different presets on the camera, represented by these different symbols. These are settings in the camera that are automatic modes, and where if you're shooting that type of photograph and you don't want to use the manual or semi-automatic modes up here, you can use one of these presets. So it has portrait, landscape, macro, which is for up-close photography, sports, which is a little running guy, and then a low light, which is a guy with a star next to it. After that is the movie mode. Whenever you turn on the movie mode, the live view will automatically turn on and it will display different things, different pieces of information. Okay, so for the rest of this demonstration, I'm going to have my camera in program mode because that's the full automatic mode, but it allows you to override a bunch of settings. First, we're going to need a memory card in our camera. The memory card slot's over here. It takes SD cards, which look like this, and you just insert it, and it's spring-loaded, and if you want to get it out, you just push it down again, it pops up, and that's how you insert the SD card. Next, we're going to go ahead and go to our menu, which is right here, and we're going to go all the way over to the first wrench and go down to Format. Format allows us to completely erase everything on the card. So all data will be lost. You can see I have 10 gigabytes used, but I've already copied that, so I say OK. So I'm deleting everything on the card and making it ready to shoot on this camera. Now on the display screen back here, it's going to display a bunch of different things that you can change. The easy way to get to it is pushing the Q button, and then you can use these arrow keys to go through the different settings. Once you highlight something, you can then push the Set button to go to that setting and then manipulate it or change it. And then push the Set button again, and it will set it and go back to that screen. Okay, so now I'm actually going to show you the basics of how to take a picture with this camera. The shutter button right here actually serves two purposes. The first is autofocus. So pushing it halfway down will engage the autofocus. And there's a little audio beep as well as a visual reference in the viewfinder. A little red dot appears as to what's focused on. When you push it all the way down, it takes the photo, and then you get a picture of my ceiling. Now one way here to demonstrate that for you is I have a little battery subject here, and I can go into live view mode by pushing this button here if I don't want to use the viewfinder. Keep in mind I'm still on program mode, so I can push the live view and I can see that battery here. If I hold down the shutter button halfway, it should autofocus. So you can see it's turned green. I'm still holding the shutter button halfway down. It's locked on, it made the beep, all that. If I push it all the way down, now I have my picture, which I've set it to display for a couple seconds and then go back. Turn off the live view, you just push that right there. Now let's say I wanted to review my photographs. That's going to be this play button right here. This play button is a pretty universal symbol on most cameras in order to review photos and video you've already taken. So you push that play button. Now you can see this battery picture I just took. The play button is blue. Now if you'll notice, several other buttons and symbols on the back of the camera are also blue, including the zoom in and zoom out symbols right here. So if I push the zoom in, you can see that I'm starting to zoom in on the photo. I can then use these arrow keys to move around the photo, and it's giving me a rough idea of where I'm looking in the photo. You can then zoom out using the other button. Now if you continue to zoom out, you will see multiple photos at once. If I zoom out even more, it's going to show me 9 photos. I only have 3 right now on here. But I can go ahead and zoom in there. If I'm on my picture here, there's a couple things I can do. This info button, if I push it, it cycles through different information screens showing me some various information about that photograph. If I push the Q button while in review mode, it acts just like a quick shortcut button in the shooting mode. So here you can see I have several different options. I can protect the image, I can rotate the image, I can even rate the image in stars 1 through 5. I can add creative filters. The next one is cropping or resizing, which you can only do with JPEGs, and this is a raw image. The next one is what does this mode dial do in picture review mode? Does it skip 1 photo? Does it skip 10 photos or 100? Does it display by date, folder, display only movies, display only pictures, or does it display by rating? So there's some pretty cool stuff you can do. The default is jump 10 images. Right now I'm shooting in RAW, but let's say I wanted to change that. Right here I can see I'm shooting in the RAW mode. The RAW mode is where, I push the Q button here and go down to RAW. RAW is the full resolution of the camera. It is a special type of file that requires a special type of program like Adobe Lightroom or Photoshop in order to be manipulated. However, it does contain a huge amount of information. Everything else here, these are all types of JPEGs. A JPEG is a type of file format, a picture format, that could be opened on pretty much any computer. Here you're going to see L for large, and it shows you the megapixels, the physical resolution, and then if you have a card in the camera, it's going to show you how many pictures you can take. And then it also tells you the appropriate maximum size. So A2 is a paper size. There's also a curve, so you'll see a rough curve or a smooth curve. That's indicating the quality of the photograph. So you can have large high quality, large low quality, medium high quality, medium low quality, and then several other small options. You also have the option of shooting in RAW, which is the full resolution of the camera, plus a large JPEG for viewing or sharing easily later. I usually either shoot in RAW or RAW plus JPEG, which now you can see it timed out on me, but it's now RAW plus JPEG. If you are just a beginner and you're really not sure Go ahead and push the Q button, go back, and just go ahead and set it on the largest high quality JPEG. That will give you, very nice high quality, easy to manipulate images, easy to share images. Now, as far as all the other buttons on the camera, I'll just go through those fairly quickly so that you can understand what they are. Whenever you're in some other mode and you want to go back to shooting mode, it's always easiest. You can just tap the shutter button and then it'll go back to the regular shooting mode. Now, up here, you're going to see an ISO button, a control dial, and a display button. The display button is literally talking about this display. Right now, the display's on. If I push the display button, it will turn it off. That means that display will remain off. It can take a picture here. And it will show up the picture, but then the picture will go away, and then the display will remain off. Most people, however, like the display to be turned on because they like to see all their settings. However, that's not strictly necessary, so if you want to save some battery, just turn the display off. But I'm going to keep it on for right now. Next to it is the ISO. ISO is one of the three main settings of any camera. So you have your shutter speed, your aperture, and your ISO. So ISO, you push that button. You can either use these arrow keys here to manipulate your ISO and put it on automatic or select a certain one, or you can also use the control dial. Putting on auto is pretty okay. That means the camera is going to do its best to get the highest quality image. Moving on down, when you're in shooting mode, these two buttons, instead of being zoom in and zoom out like in picture review mode, this one right here is actually an autofocus selection. So if I do that, I can switch between automatic selection and then manual selection by pushing the set button, and I can move my autofocus point. A lot of photographers like to keep it in the middle. Some people like to make it so that the camera just chooses the autofocus, and then you can just go ahead and tap the shutter button and that will return you back to this screen. On the back here, if I switch to manual mode, that means I need to start manipulating my shutter speed and aperture. You can see my shutter speed's highlighted here and can be manipulated by moving the control dial. So you can see it's changing. Now, if I want to manipulate my aperture, I now have to push the AV button, which, remember, stands for aperture value in Canon. So I push that button down, my aperture is now highlighted, and now I move the same wheel, and that changes my aperture. ISO, of course, is the same right here, what I just showed you. Now, around here, if you're not pushing the Q button and going through your different things, you have different shortcut buttons. White balance, autofocus, this is the color profile, and then this is the drive mode. So white balance is where you're choosing what the light source is so the camera knows how to render the color correctly. So auto white balance usually does a really good job. I typically don't have any problems with. This is your autofocus button, which gives you a few more autofocus modes, which you can then choose one shot or servo, like if you want to track an object. This is your color profile, which you can do automatic, standard, portrait, landscape. I would probably recommend doing neutral or standard, because in neutral, that's going to give you the most dynamic range and the most detail in the light and dark areas if you're shooting in RAW. If you're shooting in JPEG, the standard or vivid or, say, monochrome or even these user-defined settings would be more appropriate. In your drive modes to the left here, if you push that shortcut button, you get the options of single, continuous, timer, or remote, 2-second timer, or custom timer. Now, if I'm on one of my modes here and I want some more information, I can just push the info button and it gives me even more information about what my current settings are. My free space, my color profile, what my white balance is, things like that. And I can just push the info button again to go past that. The buttons on the side here, you can see right here, this is a flash button. So if I push this button, my flash is going to go ahead and pop up. This flash can be used not only as a flash for the camera, but it can also be used as a commander to control other Canon flashes off camera, which is a whole nother video. Next is going to be this button right here, and this button right here. This button is to release the actual lens, so you can take it off the body or put it back on. Below that is what's called the depth of field preview button. Now, when you're using that, you can hear a little sound. And that's actually the iris inside the camera closing and opening. Now, the reason why you would want to do that is because that allows you to kind of get a good idea of what the depth of field is going to look like, because it closes down the aperture in the lens before you take the picture. And that's really the only use for it. Up here is some switches on your lens, which on most lenses you'll see an autofocus or manual focus. On this particular lens, if you want to do manual focus, then you would manipulate it here yourself. Otherwise, you switch it to autofocus. This is your stabilizer, which is a series of motors connected to glass in the lens to help reduce shakiness, to help compensate for any shakiness that might occur. If you're using a tripod, you want to go ahead and turn that off to save battery. On the side of the camera, you have your ports for a physical shutter remote, which is just a simple mini jack pin. You have a microphone input for doing better audio during video. You also have an AV out digital if you have an older television set. It's also the, it looks like the USB port for the camera, and then you have a mini HDMI out. So if you wanted to display movies or photos on a TV screen, you would get a mini to a regular HDMI cable and connect it right there. Up here on the top by the viewfinder, this rubber piece is called an eye cup, and right beside it is called a diopter. A diopter is meant to help correct your vision a little bit if you're having trouble seeing through the viewfinder. What you want to do is you want to go ahead and engage the autofocus, make sure it's focused on something, and then adjust the diopter until the viewfinder is in focus for you, because it's really going to be different for everybody. Now there's one last button I wanted to go over that I think I may have skipped, and it's this button right here, the AV button I talked about before when you're in manual mode and you need to adjust the aperture. But if you're not in manual mode, if you're in program mode, shutter priority, or aperture priority, this button, this plus minus symbol, is called exposure compensation. This is what you use to make the picture brighter or darker if you feel that the pictures you're getting are too bright or too dark. The way you do that is all you have to do. Here I'm on program mode, which is, like I said, just like automatic, but you have way more control. You can push that button and you can see it highlights your light meter. And then you can use the wheel on top and you can see the little peg move, either plus or minus, if you want the picture brighter or darker. These numbers indicate stops of light. A stop of light, if I go one stop above, that means I'm doubling the amount of light. And if I go one stop below, that means I'm halving the amount of light. So that's a very easy way for you to adjust the brightness or darkness of your photos without having to know any other camera settings.